warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Tirta Ningtyas Alifia from English Literature 2016, English Department, Faculty of Languages and Literature, Universitas Negeri Makassar. Today, I'm going to present the result of my research entitled Symbolism in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel The Buried Giant. My first advisor is Dr. Abdul Halim M. and my second advisor is Dr. Yunitari Mustikawati MA, and my examiners are Dr. Salim M. and Sampah Sundra SPD M. For a little bit explanation about the novel itself told about the story of two elders, XL and Beatrice, who has been suffering dementia or amnesia. They would go to their son's village and found the big secret that have not been found before about the son's condition. Search, I used Ferdinand de Saussure's semiotic theories, Alexander Charles' first semiotic theories, and we had symbolism theories. Yeah, I used both of them, the Saussure and first semiotic theories. Why? Although it was similar semiotic theories, but it's quite different because the Saussure had more philosophical way to interpret the meaning of the symbol, and first had more complex way to interpret the meaning of the symbols. And I thought if I use both of them in my investigation, in my research, the meaning of the symbols could be interpreted deeper and clearer. Therefore, I formulated three problem statements in my research. The first one is, what are the symbols related to the main character in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel The Buried Giant? The second one is, what are the meaning of the symbols related to the main character in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel The Buried Giant? And the third one is, how does the author express the symbols in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel The Buried Giant? In this research, I successfully discovered 15 symbols that related to the main character in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel The Buried Giant. And they were classified into two types of symbols. They are original symbols and private symbols. In the chapter 4 of my research, there are findings and discussion. Findings itself, I displayed all the data or extract that I took from the novel and a little bit explanation about it. While in the discussion, I displayed all of my analysis about the extract. Let's move into the discussion. In the discussion, I classified the symbols that I have discovered before into two types of symbols. They are original symbols and private symbols. Original symbol itself is the symbol which meaning depends to the context. For example, they are oak tree, the iron age, the bridge, oak tree, the tunnel, the dark widows, and the river, and also the pillars. For original symbols, I would like to explain the river as the example of my analysis. Here is the extract of the river, and the river itself was the last place to pass to get after their son's village, the elder couple, XL and Beatrice, and the elder's trip were the process to get their own mind back from the dementia or amnesia. And the river was drawn as a cold stream with the broken ice drift in it. So everybody who comes to the river could get their consciousness back, just like the people who would jump in the cold water. They will get their conscious back. Actually, the river was a common metaphor of passage of time and memories, but in this novel, Ishiguro used his inclusion of ice fragments to the shards of memories, which were formed from the collective consciousness, yet also melt back into the collective stream of memory and thought. Actually, we really didn't have control over the memories which come into the surface, but we move along the stream of consciousness. Occasionally, coming into contact with the shards of memory that also float along the surface. These are the saucer conceptual of sign. In this sign, there was a river here with a cold ice fragment, and the signifier itself, which are the mental concept or physical concept in the human minds, was drawn as a cold stream with a broken ice fragment drift in it, while the signifier, the meaning of the symbol itself, was the consciousness. While in the first periodic reference, there is interpretation, representment, and object. The object itself is the river, and the representment is what is drawn of the river itself. It was a stream, and the interpretation of the river itself is consciousness. We also know that the river itself was expressed metaphorically because it was from the ice fragments with memory fragments and short memory in the cold stream and in our mind itself. Most of original symbols which related to the main character, XO and Beatrice, were expressed metaphorically, such as Iron Age, oak tree, the tunnel, the bridge, the pillars, and the river, while the other symbols were expressed by myth, such as Aubrey and archetype for the dark widow itself. The private symbols. The private symbol itself was a symbol that had a deeper meaning than original symbols. Actually, it was created by a person. It might be the author itself, as the result of his imagination and knowledge about belief or philosophy. And in this research, I discovered 7 private symbols. They are the Great Chamber, the Mist, the Great Plain, the Island, Village, Journey, and Underground Chamber. In private symbols, we have the Mist. The Mist itself is drawn as a thick fog that usually come to the village of the main characters, XL and Beatrice, that could be make people forget the memories. So people always scared of the mist because they believe that the mist is cause of forgetfulness of them. Actually, the mist was actually created by the breath of dragons who had been put under a spell by Merlin on orders from King Arthur after he broke a treaty with the Saxons and forbade his armies to raid Saxons' village and murder women and children. So here is the saucer method conceptual of science. It was drawn that the mist with a thick fog here, its signifier, thick fog, dragon's breath, and cause forgetfulness. And as a signifier, we got forgetfulness itself. And for the first trading reference, there is the mist as the object. Representment is thick fog, and interpretation was forgetfulness. Here, the mist was expressed as archetype. What is archetype? Archetype is the plot of piece of fiction, or the central element in the piece of fiction, which I was explained before that the mist is from the original things of the author. It was in his imagination, but actually the mist was also created in several literary works in movie and other books, which containing a cross-cultural myths. So it's called archetype. Same with the original symbols, the private symbols, most of them also expressed more metaphorically, such as Great Chamber, the Great Plain, village, and underground chamber. But also, there are symbols that express allegory for the island and journey, and archetype for the myths. There are two previous studies that related to my research. There are the research by Rato in 2017 and Juanita in 2017 too. Both of them use the same theories in analyzing of semiotics, but my research in the two previous studies have different findings because we have different objects to be analyzed. And this research discovering the symbolism in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel and had a further investigation about the way author expressed the symbol, while in the two previous studies they were not investigated about how the author expressed the symbols in the novel. The findings and discussion about the symbolism in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel The Buried Giant, I, as the researcher, successfully discovered 15 symbols that related to the main characters of the novel. While the 15 symbols are classified into two types of symbols, original symbols and private symbols. There are 8 original symbols and 7 private symbols. And I also discovered most of the symbols were expressed metaphorically, but also the author expressed the symbols using allegory, archetype, and myth also. And the symbols that related to the main characters in the novel discovered as the symbolism of mind. Every symbols discovered are symbolized some parts of mind of the main characters. For the suggestions, I have 2 suggestions for the reader of my research. The first one is Kazuo Ishiguro's. We know that it is a quite new novel because it was published in 2015 and it is containing a lot of information and semiotic symbolic aspects which still have to be analyzed in depth. And besides of that, there are symbolism that related into the King Arthur government in Middle Age, which can be investigated for another researcher. The second one I suggest for other next researcher would be investigate about semiotic aspects in different perspectives, because in analyzing semiotic aspect itself, we can develop for understanding the meaning of the text continuously. So it's all of my presentation today. Thank you for your attention. I apologize if there were any mistakes of my presentation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.